From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, I'm Rob Cairns. I'm the founder, CEO, and Chief Digital Strategist at Stunning Digital Marketing. In today's show, I have my good friend, Mr. Spencer Forman, with me. And Spence and I are going to talk all about use cases for AI. This is one episode you don't want to miss. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. The SDM Show is brought to you by Stunning Digital Marketing, the digital marketing concierge that helps you put all your marketing pieces together. We are your marketing experts. We are also your WordPress security experts and know how to lock down a website and protect yourself from bad actors. So contact us at Stunning Digital Marketing today. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. Today I have my good friend, Mr. Spencer Forman today. How are you, Mr. Spence?
Hey, Rob. Good to see you in
Hey.
person. I talk to you almost every day, but
yeah, it is good to catch up in person. You know,
good to see you on Zoom.
I don't have one of those iPhones, so FaceTime isn't happening. You know how that is.
Exactly. The
And
last
I'm not. Well, that's not quite true. I could do FaceTime on the iPad, and
oh,
but I
that's
don't.
right.
So
that's true.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I have that option. You know, but that's the way it is. So today, you and I have been talking a lot about processes and automating processes and how to make the WordPress ecosystem better and what to do. And every time we get in this discussion, the two dreaded or not dreaded letters for me come on, and they're called AI. And you've been working on some really cool stuff with AI. So what kind of drove you to get into this space, into the AI space, and why? Like, let's start there.
I mean, I would have to say that somebody would have to be Rip Van Winkle and completely unconscious not to be dragged into AI today, because it started like a trickle, it became a flow, and now it's Niagara Falls.
Yeah, I agree. It is so much part of my
It's
work.
hard to avoid it, put it like that.
Yeah. And no question. Now, you're using AI, I know, for some coding, right? Just a little bit. And I have to ask the question, because this one that always triggers me off is AI and coding for you, do you have a security concern with that, or do you figure AI is going to take care of all that?
I mean, that's a good question. That actually came up in a call today with one of my clients, that I was demonstrating a way that I believe the modern WordPress system is going to solve solutions with a la carte code. We had gotten away from all kinds of coding, and then there's the base layer of WordPress, which I think arguably has a lot of attention paid to the security, right? Because there's so many eyeballs on it. Occasionally something happens, but we haven't heard about a WordPress security issue in a long time. A lot of the plugins continue to have issues with security, but they're minor things. And there's a system that we all use in the business to notify us in advance, because they've got a bounty when a plugin has a problem in it. So it's pretty compartmentalized. When I spoke to this client today, who's a very smart fella, and he offers a lot of his stuff to me for use publicly as a training, I said the same thing. I said, here's the thing. If we code the intermediary solution with an AI, call it a snippet or a plugin, as long as we compartmentalize it and we're using underneath the hood the same curated ingredients that I put into the Minute Launch system, we're really probably more secure, because we're not carrying around a whole box full of unused tools, any of which we may not be paying attention to, that have the problem. We're only doing specifically what we want directly to, in many cases, the core of WordPress. And if you think about it, think of like a Swiss Army knife. If you only have the little baby knife or the tweezers instead of the other 37 things, if there's a problem with the other 37 things, you've got an issue. Whereas if you just coded that little tweezer, it's a very specific, limited scope to keep track of.
Yeah, I don't don't think it's as big a problem. I think the bounty program, aside has helped. I would say the best bounty program out there right now is probably the patch stack bounty program. It's the one that's kind of driven all these vulnerabilities out. When you look at most of what comes out, I would bet you maybe 4 or 5 out of 100 every week are really key, and then the others are just kind of, when you look at them, they're just kind of, oh, these need to be fixed, but they're on a scale 1 to 10, they're like a 1 or a 2, if you know
I mean,
what I mean, right?
there's a bunch of them. You can have your own plugin, but there's some. I'm looking in my email on my other machine here, but like,
That's okay.
there's a patch stack, of course. There's the word fence and the rest of them, but there's one that sends me a newsletter whenever there's something out. Do you remember the name of it? I can't. It's not coming to me for some reason. Hold on.
No, I usually pay attention to patch stacks and the iThemes newsletter typically. Those are kind of the ones that I usually spend my
Um,
time in.
for some reason, it didn't come to me. I can look at my emails if it's important. But the point is, for anybody who's concerned, there's plenty of services that, since it's an
Yep.
open source community, just will notify you. Like, for example, there's lots of minor notifications, but like for something that was functionally broken, I got a notification in advance on behalf of the people I represent to say one of the updates, like to WooCommerce's Stripe Gateway plugin, it
Yep.
just broke the hell out of the interface. And so for people who were going to otherwise update, it wasn't a security thing as much as a practical problem. We avoided the need for them to go through the pain and suffering of having to do that, which was useful for everybody, right?
Yeah, I would
Yeah, and
agree.
that's
So
only, by the way, in a WordPress open source. That's one of the benefits when people say, "Oh, open source is not safe." I go, "Well, imagine a closed company where the CEO, CTO, marketing person says, "Shh, don't tell anybody that we had a breach." You know.
yeah, and that happens more than people think. It happens in even big companies. Like forget WordPress and forget marketing companies. We remember about 3 or 4 years ago when Staples in the US got hit, and they didn't, and it was a contractor who brought in a virus on his laptop and connected to their network, and he was doing POS work. And look what
Yeah.
we got.
Cool.
And when you remember that happened, Staples told nobody for almost 9 or 10 months because it was like, let's bury this thing. And if the regulatory people don't find out and nobody finds out, well, nobody's going to be pissed off to say the least.
That goes back to the in the early days,
Yep.
the secretary doesn't have the ability to keep track of this crazy new security protocol with 4,000 characters in their password. So they put a sticky note on the edge of their computer. It's always the human beings that cause the
Oh,
problem.
worse, by the way, worse than a computer. You ever walked into a data center and picked up the master keyboard that controls 5 servers and see
Right.
what's under it? Need I say more, right? So
Right. I mean, it's
anyway,
just that simple.
yeah. So it's into AI. Um, so you're working on some use cases for some clients. And some of this is probably going to eliminate some plugins, right? Or a few plugins, or lots of plugins.
The basic concept is simple, and it's just this. What we've got now is a core of WordPress. And the
Mhm.
core of WordPress has the functionality in it to essentially achieve most of the outcomes we want. Not all, but a good majority of the plugins that people use are for GUI interface
Yep.
adaptation. So to make the GUI interface have easier controls to do to the core what we want it to have done. And as a result of that, like Advanced Custom Fields Pro is a great one, but even the theme builders like Cadence, we've got Gutenberg under the hood. We've got post types under the hood. We have the database MySQL and all the ways you can manipulate it. But just to get that
Yep.
done requires in the past or has required in the past a human interface that is simpler to use and allows you to manage and do things. But imagine if you could just bypass that whole layer.
Which
And
is not a bad idea.
well, I mean, think of it. I use the metaphor in my Fridays office hours of I have been a pilot my whole adult life since I was 17. In the early days, even in a little aircraft, you'd have steampunk gauges and dials and switches and circuit
Yep.
breakers and everything else, manual controls. In a modern plane, even a low cost one, I mean, if that's a relative term, there's just two panels, minimal, maybe a couple extras that have all the information, mostly controlled in an automated way, but in a way that's visually just here you
Mhm.
go, deal with this one screen. And I would imagine that aviation will catch up a little later because there's a lot of regulatory stuff. But soon you just have an AI interface that, in some way or another, lets that be like Tony Stark's Jarvis. Just talk to the
Yep.
interface. And that's what I'm saying in WordPress is that at today's level, transitionally, what I'm advocating and actually building as somebody who has both the position in WordPress for 20 years, a stack of curated mechanical levers to pull, is I
Mhm.
am showing my clients that it's better, quicker, faster, easier, more flexible to remove many of those plugins from the process, even, and just directly get the outcome you want from the machinery under the hood. And in some cases, that results in using less of the actual curated plugins. Doesn't mean we have to rip their guts out. It just means that, and I'll show you some use cases today, sometimes you only need two things instead of 12.
Yeah. And frankly, if you're writing coding versus using a plugin, and I don't care where you're writing the coding, that's actually going to speed up your website. Like, let's be honest, right? Plugins, we know, especially on cheaper hosting, and that's another discussion for another day. I don't even want to get into today, but we also know, as people who spend a lot of time in the WordPress ecosystem, large number of plugins, crappy hosting equals slow site. So this
Yeah.
also gives your site a fighting chance just a little bit.
Yeah. The problem that we're looking at, I mean, there's a transitional phase. You know, everything has this. We had that, and like if you think of the term Luddites that came from the turn of the last century when
Yep.
manual mill workers were sewing fabrics by hand versus using
Yep.
machines, there's always going to be like a loss of skills, but those skills may not actually be the things that are the best use of human labor.
Mhm.
And so
Agree.
what I'm suggesting is that we're in a transitional phase for business as well as for the actual technology where, for example, the interfaces are going to evolve. I right now we're hearing devices. I've seen the Meta glasses. I have virtual goggles. There's lots of things that all of us use that could be augmenting or
Mhm.
communicating. Even on my phone now, I have all of the LLMs. I just talk to it. Today I did in my front yard, I wanted to figure out how to do a 20 by 20 brick paver patio. I mean, I'm like, I just take a picture, I talk to it, it gives me everything I need in like a couple sentences. Okay,
Yep.
then the other part of it is the output. Like, where do you place the AI interface and what do you do with it? Some people
Mhm.
believe, and I think wrongfully, to replace the human interaction with the AI. And I think that's the mistake. I think that the AI should always
Agreed.
be at the service of the human relationship because I was having lunch with somebody who's a professional counselor. I have lots of friends like you who do security consulting or people who are in law or business
Mhm.
where their expertise was previously both gatekeeper of the knowledge as well as the tools. Well, the tools are now available for everybody. So now it's going to come down to who is the human being you trust enough to interact with the tools in a way that presents to you and your customers the thing you need as an outcome in a world where everybody has access to everything at light speed.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
it's a
it's true.
difference of viewpoint.
Yeah, and all these people running around before we even dive into use cases saying, "Oh, AI is going to hurt jobs." Didn't we hear that with page builders when page builders came out? Didn't we hear that years ago? I mean, I started my career in programming business systems. Guess what? They're now paying business system programmers millions of dollars because there's nobody around to do them anymore because they're
Yeah.
running older languages. And people laugh at that and they say, but I thought this was going to cut jobs. No. So, if you're a marketer and you're using AI for ads, you still need somebody to run the ads and look at the analytics. Like it's just changing how we do things. And that's your premise, really.
I think you have to recognize as a human being that the world we're living in had a promise. When I was a kid, we had the
Yeah.
show The Jetsons, the cartoon. And
I
then you
love
have
the
Star.
Jetsons.
Okay. So let's use Star Trek as a metaphor. In Star Trek, even if you're not a geek, they have everybody on the ships. You want food, there's the replicator. It's just a device. You go up and say, I want the pancakes with eggs and sausage and a cup of coffee. And the door comes up and your food's there. Now we have 3D printing. So one can imagine conceptually the idea of if you had organic material, it could maybe be formulated into something solid and you can eat it. It's not the real thing, maybe. But the point is, imagine if you have a situation where all of the steps of hiring a crew to load the material and cook and go to the kitchen and, like there's 9,000 steps in there. If instead you have a tool that now allows you to just say, I want pancakes and sausage, why would anybody imagine that we should keep around as the only way to do it the old-fashioned way? Now, I think there'll be a nostalgia, there'll be a craftsman thing. During COVID or before COVID, remember there was all those hipsters wearing overalls and long beards using typewriters in Starbucks and stuff, right? But like other than the nostalgia of records, LPs, the practical use for mankind is what the Jetsons promised. I want unlimited health care. I want awesome food. I want to be able to even transport myself to the other side of the world, because the promise of technology was not for the oligarchs to crush us into slaves. It was to liberate humans to do things with our existence that is more than just grinding away in a factory. Now, I won't talk politics here, but we all understand this thing we're facing is going to go one of two ways. It's going to be used to crush every worker so that a couple elite people can control the masses in a way that whatever the F they want to do. Or it will allow us to finally realize if we just apply a fraction of our current resources, we can just start as a human species starting to do things that are like, hey, maybe our lives shouldn't be about grinding away 80 hours a week in a factory, hoping not to get sick and then have to die because we can't afford healthcare. I mean, that's it. That's what this is about. And it starts here, like a couple steps.
Yeah, I agree with you. So let's jump into some use cases. Where would you like to go?
Well, I mean, in a practical world, because the philosophy of what's going on with the world and politics and humanity has so many angles and so many options that can't be anticipated in a call. I mean, everything from the nature of who we are to spirituality to aliens to everything. But in the practical world, in the job world, I think that WordPress right now, let's speak to that, to me has a vacuum at the top because of Mr. Mullenweg's just checking himself out of the game right when the best part of the game was about to begin. And I don't think he understood or anticipated it, but let's say there's a vacuum at the top. The democratization of what's in WordPress means that somebody, and I'll speak to myself personally, I have an IKEA mindset with a business where I've curated certain things. I have 20 years of history as a human being with a certain flavor, a certain type of, let's be honest, it's Spence. It's not Rob. It's not Kathy or Joe or Fred or Susie. It's Spence. I have the ability to market now as one person. I've demonstrated this show using the very same tools to get more than enough clients who say, I want a relationship with Spence or what he's doing. So somebody in the new WordPress, whether you use my system or just do the same thing, because I publish all the information how I've done this, you make your version of this so that you become as a human being valuable to people by using the one thing that WordPress has that other platforms don't. It can be a black box or whatever color box that is owned and controlled with security that has all of the pieces and parts that one needs when you apply your humanity to it to deliver an outcome for a person who is asking you to do that for them. And that by itself is enough. The idea that people in the future are going to be building plugins and selling plugins on their own, I think that business is done. It's not going to go away tomorrow, but it's done. There's no person who could start a plugin today that would ever achieve any of the capacity of current plugins, simply because, as I can show or demonstrate, I can make these Swiss Army single blade solutions with a process that everybody and their mother can do today. Why would you want to buy a bunch of Swiss Army knives and like try to avoid them banging into each other?
So why don't you demo? So why don't you demo? And what I would say is, if you're listening to this, jump on over to the website or the YouTube channel and watch the demo. Because
Oh, I like that we can do this. We can't do this on the telephone. This is
yeah,
so
I
nice.
know.
Rob, it's so,
Huh?
you're such a modern guy. This is so modern.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Can you
Well,
guys
that's
see my
okay.
screen? I have a lot of
Yeah,
junk here. Can you see my screen? There's nobody live here, but
there, there it goes. Yep, I can
okay.
see your screen.
Okay. Do you see you see Bernie KPI black belt here?
I do.
Okay, good.
So,
All right.
so Daddy Spence, what are you going to teach us today?
This is like office hours with a friend.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So here's the deal. Bernie, this wonderful human being, he lives in Great Britain, very smart man, has great business. He's one of my minute launch solution customers for a long time now in VIP. And what's happened is he has been very instrumental. In fact, I've put him on the front just to show you guys of WP Launchify. He gave a great testimonial, among others, in video form because using the very same thing that I'm demonstrating, having social proof, okay, is very imperative. And I've always had happy
Mhm.
customers. I have thousands of these, but he actually made a video on this. And this was before today's thing. What he does, which is exemplary of what I'm describing of my business, when people do the Spence's Minute Launch system, they are told, don't put ingredients in the soup on your own. Use the
Yep.
ingredients, the recipes I've outlined. If you have any ideas that you don't know how to do, just ask me in an email. Bernie is an expert at doing that. And so I've been using him for many office hours. He said to me before he went off to gather one of his kids from college, like we have same age kids, he said, I want to do a testimonial thing that's very easy that I can display. And he uses the cadence and the other things as well. But he's also very honest about how much he doesn't want to get so into the details of how to do stuff. So I said, let me do an office hours about it, which I did on Friday, and I'll link to that video so that I don't have to be redundant. But what it did was instead of using Advanced Custom Fields Pro and instead of using a bunch of extra tools, I just vibe coded the custom post type, and I'll show you that here for testimonials. And what that means is in the past, geeking out here, when you wanted to do something like keep track of testimonials and make it dynamic, so you didn't literally have to
Yep.
make an image every time,
Yep.
you just make like a custom post type and a way to add those testimonials. And when you do that, there's an interface that up till now, most people have used ACF Pro, but you could have used Jet Engine or something else. It was designed, like I mentioned, to be the GUI interface between what's under the hood of WordPress and what it is that, you know, a human being's capable of. Now, the downside of ACF and everything else is that that whole layer requires you to know ACF and all the nuances. So when I vibe coded this, and you can watch the video, it made this whole custom post type where you put whatever, you know, the testimonial is either manually into the content, and then the person's information is all here, including cool stuff that, by the way, these dynamic, I'm showing right now a dynamic calendar view where you can select the date. All of this are designed by my instructions to use the core tools, JavaScript, and styles of WordPress admin. So no extra overhead. And it did an amazing job. So what I ended up with here, shortcutting to it, is, oh my God, I now have a database engine to store testimonials. And I demonstrated how easy and cool it could be to add them in manually, or I also vibe coded this really cool tool that allows you to just import with the CSV file or with a Google Sheet link. Oh my God,
Uh-huh.
how amazing is that? Now, Bernie came back from gathering his kid and he met with you this morning. I started the call late. It was a 30-minute call. He's got access to me because he's one of my clients. This is where me as the human being become relevant.
Mhm.
Spence, I'm really busy. How are we going to get the data in there if people want to submit stuff? And I said, you have two choices in our modern world. Three, maybe. One, we can use the Forms plugin that we've got, which is Fluent Forms, and we can map the fields to the custom post type, and there you go. That's what I do myself with, let's say, my current system here. 1WDTV is my hub of marketing, and I have the thing called Have I Helped? This is Fluent Forms with its built-in standalone form. So I just give a short link to somebody and I say, Rob, tell me honestly what you think of me. I'm a piece of shit or what? You submit your stuff and I get it into my database. But this is even not as cool as what I built for Bernie. So I said, instead of that, choice two, what if we vibe code a custom form that gives you all the things you need and nothing you don't want that will show up on the front end, including an admin dashboard. So we had 2 minutes, literally 2 minutes left in our call. I said, hold on. And I typed a set of instructions, which I can actually share here because I'm working here. I used a project. Yep. And I went in here, and somewhere in this code, I'll pull this out later so I don't delay us here. I instructed it what I wanted, and I'll be damned. I said, give me a separate snippet, which it did for the input form. And when it did that, here's what shows up on the front. Holy cow. Now, the original plugin is a snippet, Influence Snippets, which is what we can do for vibe coding. It allows us to have this thing we talked about a moment ago, which is accountability, security, like transparency, what's doing what, because otherwise it gets away from us. Notice I use the tag feature and the grouping to make testimonial slider. And here is number 5. That's the part that does the form. Here's the part that does the integration. Here's the style sheet. That was the CSV import system, which I was working on. So each of these parts now is specifically doing what I want, but I can turn them on and off with a switch. I can plug them together in one device and one plugin if I want later. But right now, incredibly modular. Now, notice I'm working on an add-on because one of the things that I think Fluent Snippets doesn't do right now is what we call versioning control. When you have code, let's say I'm messing around, if I don't save the version that was last working and I change something I don't like, for some reason they have not included that like we have in WordPress, like when you do a post and you go, oh, I was writing something, I want to go back. So I'm making it that's possible for Fluent Snippets, just as an easy way to have this accountability. But at the end of the day, oh my God, I now have this literally would have taken me a solid day to a week to do if I had hand coded it. It would have taken me a couple hours in Fluent with twiddling around and so forth. But with this, if you follow instructions and you keep it compartmentalized, all I'm doing is I'm building essentially one of the blades of a Swiss Army knife for each of the things I want the underlying WordPress core to do. And guess what's not here? ACF Pro has nothing to do with this. Cadence has nothing to do with this. But it works within the same minute launch system that those other tools still exist within. And that's
really cool. And the biggest thing is from a cost perspective, you're not going out and licensing all these tools. I mean, the easy way is to pay for the minute launch system, but that's another story, right? But
I want to comment on that. This is important. I'm going to share the screen for this because, sorry, folks, heads up, mini pitch for what I'm doing. Okay. My system is $97 a month for everything you need. Now, as I said, anybody can do what I'm doing, but what you get is about $6,500 worth of mechanics under the hood for any of the things that we still may need to use. Some of these might just go away as I do this. You get unlimited email consultation. This is an important thing. For the 97, I can scale Spencer when people ask me singular email questions because I can respond asynchronously. And also I use tools to automate some of those things. It's still me, but I can answer 2, 3, 4, 500 emails a day if they're singular emails, not Spence, something broke on my site and I don't know why because I'm using random things. When you have everything systematized and you build a business where like IKEA, you know, everything under the hood, backwards and forwards, I can do that. And then you also get the hosting. The hosting for me is built in because that means everybody has the same stuff and it's not your crazy host that's breaking stuff with caching. Now, one of the things that I've done this year is I've turned this into a little bit better panel where, including offering this to other people, anybody can send themselves or their client to use my system because they can use my system and they get all the software to keep, but it's not about the software. It's about the system. If you send a client there and don't do anything else for the underlying platform, you apply your skills as an expert in security or in nutrition or whatever, but let me be the concierge expert for the platform your client's on. Just like if you put them into some kind of hosted platform, like, Google Workspace, and you get $20 a month or $240 a year, or you can go pro and you get 10 clients at a cost of less than 30 a month with everything included. You never worry about anything else. All my expertise to you as the intermediary, and you can mark that up to $200 a month. You can make a 60 a month referral from me, $720 a year, plus whatever you mark this up, $150, $180 more, plus your expertise.
Yep.
And that's why I'm saying the future that I see of AI is I am not going to own this idea. I'm going to own the Spencer Forman IKEA version of it. And everybody else could, I think, likely end up in the same spot with their thing of it. But that's the awesomeness of this. What's not going to happen is that people aren't going to be making plugins, onesie, twosie, selling plugins at the flea market anymore, because that's just, nobody's going to be dealing with that anymore. Like, one last example, sorry, like automobiles. I was a kid, I was building cars. I was going to the auto shop and buying parts and rebuilding stuff in the junkyard. Like, now you get a car, even a used car, 2000 something and up, and it's a computer. You just deal with the computer and that's it. And I think that's what WordPress is going to evolve into in order to be the thing that somebody can own and control, have security and privacy, and you can have any topic about any reason. And all of those problems of worrying about an oligarch running a platform and shutting you down because they don't like your money, your politics, your whatever, goes away for you or your clients.
Yeah, and it's got to go that way. I mean, the reality is things are changing in a big way, and I think anybody who thinks that AI is not part of this has to be. I think they're a little bit out to business lunch.
I want to mention something too, because this is this isn't a dig at any particular person, but you and I are very good friends, and we talk about. It's important for me as a human being who's a capitalist, and I'm older than a lot of folks, not you necessarily, but a lot of folks in our business, because we're 27. I believe the golden rule applies more in business than it should even in regular relationships, but that when you treat your customers with contempt, you violate the principles of why we're here. And there are people who I've said publicly, Syed Balki at Automotive, Matt Mullenweg, who have demonstrated contempt for people as customers. And what I want to say is this tool, this technology, it's not difficult for one to imagine. Just asking the AI to go and take the entire suite of what Automotive plugins do and replicate it. Not fork it, just replicate it. So if you think about it, it's like one of those fables or parables, the tortoise and the hare. In the end, the people who will win are the ones who treat human beings with respect and love and dignity and honesty, and don't do things like having 7-step cancellation processes or, spray painting their billboards with ads or talking shit behind people's back or whatever other bad stuff has happened, because this levels the playing field. And it's not Spencer Forman. I have better things to do than worry about those two guys. But when it comes to what people expect or understand about how to behave, I want to be a shining light of, look, you can really make money by treating people well, especially in a world where the robots are running things.
Of course you can. I mean, the other thing people forget is people work with the people they like and they trust, not necessarily. I mean, there's many people offering similar services out there. It's just finding the people you want to work with, and that comes to how you treat people. So I don't disagree with you at all on that one.
We all deserve to, this is what's unfortunate, but it's the thing we were talking about. Like, where does this all go? I want to be honest. I had a bit of an existential crisis, combination of what's happened in the United States lately, along with AI. Why? Because it really does present a fork in the road for us. I mean, I've been around long enough to see, I'm a Gen Xer, 1,000 the world is over moments. But this one really hits home because This gives an individual so much power and control when you think there's billions, 8.5 more billion people on the planet, that if we don't collectively take the high road on this across all aspects and start treating human beings with the level of like, we have to all get along and support everybody in a way that is not deceitful, it really is going to end badly. There is no
Yeah,
good
it is.
outcome. Like if you think of the Marie Antoinette story, right? Or Julius Caesar, like pissed off people have way too many things they can do to hurt other people, including those in power. So we really need to start looking at this globally, but starting with what do humans do? Maybe the answer is we all shouldn't be grinding away 80 hours a week. Maybe it is that we should have a Jetsons thing where the automation benefits people on a pretty level playing field. And sure, there could still be really wealthy people and have like more toys. But how about that the rest of the people aren't buried underground or made to feel badly about like basic necessities? And I'm not talking politics. I'm talking about jobs and, like laying off people just because you're going to bump your numbers that week or something. That's
Yeah, yeah,
nonsense.
I agree with you.
Sorry,
That's
that was
really good.
I took you on a ride into like preachiness, but like that's where this is all going
It's
at the
okay.
end of
It's
the day.
okay. I agree with you. That's a really good use case too, by the way, that you were showing. Um,
I mean, there's a lot of
that's
other
one
things
of,
that I've been doing, including the interface for WordPress. So let me just throw
yeah.
in where I'm ultimately taking this. Imagine an AI Jarvis that I have the
Mhm.
ability because I have curated, this is important. There was some company fella who released a plugin that's kind of doing the similar things. And there's plenty of, I mean, this is an open idea. But the difference is, in order to really make it work, where you can have like a Jarvis interface that you just say, I'm a company doing this, and I want to make a marketing campaign about that, and look at the customers and what they bought and what their demographics are, and interact with the world and the site. To put that like head on top
Yeah.
of your stack of WordPress stuff requires one to curate a stack because
Yeah.
otherwise you have to build all of the tools and build what the tools are to do. And that's, I think, the
Hmm.
differentiator where, at least for me, I'm not the only one who could possibly do this, but I certainly have an advantage because I've got this legacy of what I've been working on so long. And I think that's what gives me, in addition to this other conversation of politics, I don't want to be in politics for WordPress or otherwise, but when I'm an
Me either.
influencer of ideas, this is
Yeah.
how I can show people how it could be
Yeah, I
for
agree.
themselves.
And I think it's headed that way. I think we've been seeing, I mean, honestly, we've been seeing AI stuff before the word AI was coined. It's like if you take a look, even go back, something simplistic like Photoshop.
Yeah.
And I hate Photoshop more than anybody. But Photoshop had AI built in it before we started calling AI. We just called it Photo
Yeah.
Tools at the time. When you think about it, right?
The
There's a lot
difference.
of
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut off your question. Sorry.
It's okay. No, there's a lot
I,
of things like that was my point. That's all.
I was going to say, we had a WP Tonic show the other day, and I was talking with like Matt Medeiros and a few other folks that are on the show. And I said, here's the thing. Everybody has their own backyard of stuff. So they all think about I'm going to plant, roses in my
Yep.
backyard or whatever. But it's not enough to think of your individual plugin or your individual service anymore. So like the theme builders and the plugin authors are all doing AI. It's nonsense. It's a complete waste of time
Hmm.
because they're just providing ingredients to a larger solution. And their AI thing is nonsense when you think of like if you had a car and you talk to the brakes or you talk to the front headlight, like, hello, front headlight, I hope that you'll turn on now when it gets dark. I mean, that's not how it works. You need a central computer that talks to all the parts and knows what all the
Hmm.
parts are doing. And that is
Yeah.
not what the individual parts makers should be doing right now. They're just wasting everybody's time because that business model, that world is over. If you look at what I just did, and I have a dozen other examples I do all the time, every week, during the week and on office hours, I'm really saying I have to give pause when I'm about to embark on using one of the intermediary GUI interface tools, even Cadence,
Yep.
because it's much easier sometimes to know WordPress is under the hood and that's what Cadence is actually talking to. What if I just
Yeah.
made the Jarvis that works with the minute launch
Get
system to do that? And it just
get
faster,
rid of
easier,
the
more
middleman.
modular. One knife instead of a whole Swiss Army knife of stuff.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to throw out there too is we're talking about use cases. A podcast I really like is a podcast called How I Use AI. And it's exactly
Oh, I
what
don't
he
know that one.
says.
That sounds good.
Yeah. And it's basically, it's not really a WordPress centric podcast. It's more a general, but it's
Yeah.
like, how do I use AI and what do I get out of it and ideas? And it just
Oh.
fuels, and all these LMs are really fueling this as well. I mean,
Right.
I was reading another article earlier today, and it was talking about how people are abandoning Google Keep in Rows, which is Google's basic note-taking package, for Notebook LM, which is Google's LM product. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff like that going
Well,
on.
I want to throw in a Google call out for two reasons. One is one of my brilliant clients who I've been vibe coding this really complex business for, and it's working out really well. Because the vibe coding in the method I'm describing allows us to layer the features and functions that she needs. Her name's Julie, and she's doing a thing with skeet shooting, which is as much as I want to say. But the point is, we're just adding knives into our own custom Swiss Army knife, but without having to go and build all the, foundry to make metal into a knife and stuff. But when we talk about Google, I years ago have been an outspoken critic of them. From day one. But since I was talking on the WP Tonic show, they used to have like Rand Fishkin, who was a well-known, Mozi SEO. He was the expert on SEO and organic traffic in Google. And one show in particular was a few years ago. I gave him a hard time, and he looked at me. There's a recording of it, like crazy eyes at me, because they said Google's been lying to everybody all along, and they're one day this is all coming out. And at the time, it was something to do with that stupid AMP product. They were trying to convince people to make mobile stuff, to kiss the ring of Google for no reason other than they can
which
make
is
it.
basically died. Well,
it died because it was a lie. And now we know with AI that their whole search engine business was a giant lie. They've been laughing the whole time, trillions of dollars. But what I show for my marketing is, as a result of them turning off the nonsense, you can now get to the front page of Google or YouTube with a very simple method, making a 30-second video. And you're welcome to go to my YouTube channel and watch it. It's just a simple matter of their algorithm no longer works because they turned it off. Why? Because they decided the bus left without them. They were in the bathroom at the hockey game, and everyone piled in the bus and left. And they're like taking a piss in the trough, and nobody is there. And they're like, oh my God, we have to catch up. So they came out yesterday, day before, whatever it was, with the whole suite of tools, from Flow to Veo image creation to Imagine and to this other thing called Firebase Studios and so forth. And I, on a whim, took Julie, and we took her interface and her WordPress solution. Now, this is important. There's all these outside world tools that are based upon another stack of equipment. If you think of WordPress as the only box you really own and control, truly. I mean, maybe Drupal, but they don't have anywhere near what we got. All these other ones, including Next.js and Node.js and all these other platforms, Amazon, SES, anything you host on, are really is somebody else's platform, even if it's your own code. But that Firebase Studios allows you to vibe code some kind of JavaScript-based solution, something I know nothing about. Like, I'm not good at coding in that. I coded more traditional stuff. I said, Julie, let's try to make a mobile app real quick that connects to the WordPress backend that we built, that we could give to these tournament owners to like interact with the stuff. Just shits and giggles. Knock me cold. In like 3 minutes, I was able to, with no knowledge at all, vibe code some weird interface. Now, here's the problem. It sort of worked. I know nothing about it or what's under the hood because I'm not proficient in those languages. I don't know where to host it. I mean, it gave me instructions.
Yeah.
But the fact I'm saying is two things. When you democratize and use these tools, but have the WordPress stack in a box, like with the minute launch system, you can actually go into the world with what we talked about for headless things, because that stores the data in the place you need, but you could still interact with it by using one of these crazy given it to you for free Firebase Studios things. And then the second thing I did, because it's part of the minute launch AI thing, was I made it where it generates live video for marketing or for placeholder or featured images. Floored me because images, voices, videos with voice, 8-second clips, instantly created, photorealistic, just because my WordPress site told it to. I'm kind of shitting the bed here, Rob, because all these other companies are throwing all the safety locks away on AI and throwing it all out there trying to get market share. So for those who are trying to make a living, if you want to go over there, the problem is, what do you do with it when it's done? Do you even know what to do with it? Versus WordPress, you do. And I'm saying you can have your cake and eat it too. You can own the space that has your data and mostly you interact with, but you can also plug in these other tools directly or on your own and do things that how much would it cost you have done it? I have no idea. But now you can literally have something that, oh my God moment.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, people have to understand the power of AI in our business and what we do and the things it can do. Things like coding, things like, oh, as a podcaster, I'd be dead without AI. I won't even talk about it. I've actually showed on my YouTube channel as much as a couple of weeks ago is how I build my up-to-date show notes. I've thrown it right out there. There's no secret on that one. It just makes and I think what you have to do is find out the tools that work well for you. So the AI tool you're using might not be the same AI tool somebody else is using.
Yeah.
And
it's a
standard
process.
yeah, it's a process, but standardize on that tool too, because the AI will train itself as you use the tool more and more to what you're doing. So that there is worth doing that as well.
We're seeing, because we use similar tools, although I don't know if this is on StreamYard, but for example, like when I do my 30-second video or my Friday office hours, or I do a longer form, master class, I'm lazy. I used to edit stuff and blah, blah, and I'm not doing that anymore. I got a 4K that I use in 1080p camera and a screen thing in 4K. And what I do is I use Loom. And then I take the Loom and it gives me a transcript and I can edit it there and I get the video and I have Canva make an image and then I put it in YouTube and then I have the AI write a best summary based on my transcript. Then I copy it and paste it and share it socially. Now, there's 9 steps in that. Here's what AI does for me. I was able to agentically place all that stuff into a process that basically I don't have to do all the copying and pasting and manual stuff. All I do is I go, here's the video. I'll be back. And there's still aesthetic choices. Like Canva right now works better when I just make the thing. But what I've done is made a few components so that it's essentially just gets the pieces ready and I just put it out there. But the bottom line is now one person can save 9 steps and then multiply that times all the other things like social sharing, interacting with clients, making a sales page. All of those things can be pre-programmed in a way that was the promise of the Jetsons. That was the promise of Star Trek. I can go off and exercise or play, throw the hockey stick around with my kids and shoot at the net in the backyard. Something other than sitting there all day doing copy paste to get this thing out. And I think that's where low-level people can win when they learn the tools that allow them to go to a higher level person who has a business and just say, I can save you 1 million hours of time. And that's
the only thing that scares me, and it's an interesting philosophy, is because we don't have any of those low-level people. So what we are going to lose is low-level junior programmers, low-level. You get what I'm saying? And if we lose those low-level people, how do we develop the high-level people? That's my only concern in the long run.
We're running into a problem because I have school-age kids still. And what the problem is like, for example, my kids were the oldest maybe, but the other one's not. The oldest is going to be 25 in January.
Yeah.
They don't know how to sign in cursive. They don't know how to write in cursive. Now,
they don't even teach it in the elementary schools anymore.
It's not in there, right? I'm not saying, oh, that's the end of the world, but I am saying it's kind of odd because if you think about it, like the Declaration of Independence, I mean, there's things historically written in it. But then again, I ask myself, well, does it matter? Because the AI is going to be able to translate that into words anyway. So we've got this real problem of skills based upon knowledge that when you lose the foundations, one example I love, but again, it may not matter. The original Saturn V F5 or F1 rocket engines, those gigantic ones, were handmade. And the people that knew how to do that aluminum welding, they're dead and gone and nothing is left of it. So like, I don't like his politics, but when Elon Musk's company SpaceX was making engines, they had that problem. We have to just remake these in the
Yep. Yep.
essence of this because that skill set's gone. But then, did it matter? I don't know because they seem to be working pretty damn well. That's the issue we're facing.
Yeah, sometimes it matters and sometimes it doesn't. But the problem is, what I'll tell you from a programming standpoint, it's not the coding. So the language is to me irrelevant. So whether it's C++ or SQL, the thought process is all the same. Like analytic is analytic and logic is logic, right? So, and I can prove that to a point. When I programmed, I learned an old style business language called COBOL, which is very common in business systems. Do I have an analytical mind? Yeah. Yeah, I am dating myself. There's no question. But the point I'm making is the problem is if you don't develop those skills and you get into a senior role, do you have the skills to be able to do it? That's the question.
Yeah. It is a problem of losing the understanding of how things work because there's plenty of movies, some of them campy, some of them scary, but like even Wall-E from Disney were, like, or Idiocracy, even worse. When all the people left the planet because the pollution went up to the space station, got fat driving around, like they came back, nobody knew how to do anything. And Idiocracy, the smartest man in the world, just knew how to say 2 words. Like we're really facing into the headwind of that right now. I mean, if you look at America, especially, like there's a group of people that want that to be our future. And I think that is a really interesting problem. But when I speak to my college age kids and even my younger age kid, they view it differently. They do have interest in stuff because it's very retro that would potentially, if given the opportunity, allow them to use the tools to accelerate their knowledge of certain things. But again, the difference will be factory jobs, factory knowledge, manufacturing versus fundamentals. Like I ask a question, like with my 14-year-old, does he really need to know logarithmic algebra? Does he really? Versus how to calculate a tip in his head at a restaurant. I mean, is it more important to have practical geometric skills or trigonometry level? And that's where some of these things, I think the school systems are going to have to adapt as well, because we all carry around a computer in our pocket more powerful than the whole space program. And if it's going to be wearable and this and that soon, maybe we should be taught human skills and leave the technology skills for people who want to go to that level, but at the same time, not be idiots about it. I mean, in the Star Trek universe and so forth, people aren't all idiots. They're just specialized. I can be a poet because I can spend all my time being great at poetry instead of worrying about trigonometry and being taught to be a cog in a factory machine, which is historically the nature of what schools have been doing. And I think there's something to that because at 58, I'm looking at the last third of my life and I realize I've succeeded my whole life with skills that I taught myself that were not based upon anything that I really learned in school, other than some very esoteric stuff like, how to think like an attorney, how to maybe basic, communication skills. But most of the stuff I did was because I desired to learn and I found it somewhere. And I think that curiosity is accelerated today when, for me, I'm like, my mind is blown. I can't find enough hours in the day to satisfy all the things I want to learn about. But
me either. And it's one of the biggest reasons. Yeah, it's one of the biggest reasons I love this field is, we're always learning and we're always changing and we're always challenged kind of. So,
agreed.
Hey, Spence, thanks for sharing all this stuff about AI and the use case. I love that use case. As I said, if you're listening, walk on over to the YouTube channel or the website and watch the use case because it's really amazing to see what Spence is doing. If somebody wants to get a hold of you or talk to you about the Minute Watch system, how's the best way?
Just go to wplaunchify.com. You can sign up for a free call with me if you want to talk more about what your things are. You can just add your name to the mailing list and then you'll be notified. I have office hours open to the public. I have all of my content. All of it is publicly available. The reason is for the reason I just described, is that the software is free. You don't get the software for free from me, but you get my information about it. And then what I'm selling is not the software. I'm selling, you get a relationship with me starting at $97 a month. Stay as long as you want, leave anytime. And if you want, you can have hands-on help. And that's how I do it. Where going forward, I hope that I'll be able to scale this even more, because with that IKEA kind of mindset, Ingvar probably hung out in the store. I don't know if you gave me that podcast, but somebody gave me a podcast, The Story of IKEA. And I loved it because in the early days, he built this, but then he reached the point where I hope to reach, which was everybody understands how it works. And now my mindset could be further expanded to a larger group of people in a ready to go system that WordPress always could have, would have, should have been, in my view, but didn't happen with the current administration.
Yeah, well, what else is new? But we're not going down that rabbit hole today, because we'll be at this for hours and then some, right?
Maybe another
You
show.
shake your... Yeah. Thanks, Spence. Have an awesome day, my friend.
Thanks, Rob.
Bye. This podcast has been brought to you by Stunning Digital Marketing, your digital marketing concierge to help the business owner put all his pieces together, whether it's email marketing, WordPress security, WordPress design and development, PPC, and more. Text Stunning Digital Marketing for all your digital marketing needs today. Thanks, Spence, for joining me on this edition of the SDM Show. The SDM Show is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I miss you very much every day. My mother, Ann Cairns, who's still doing really well and is an inspiration. And of course, Tiz Maroney. And Tiz, I know I've said it, but thank you so much for all the inspiration you give me every day.